Hello and welcome back to Posted. When we left off, they were at the football game. They were taking bets on whether or not there'd be touchdowns and how much of a catastrophe the game was going to be because they expected to be slaughtered. Dee Dee kept rolling his dice and giving them answers like the cheerleaders were about to fall, which they did. But when we left off, the team had actually scored another touchdown. So another touchdown at the end of the third put us within 3 points. It was close. Number 80, bench, sat on the edge, helmet in hands, waiting, like always. Oh boy, he's definitely not going to play now, Dee Dee said. There was too much at stake. Well, at least we could tell him we came, I thought, that we were all pulling for him, all three of us. At one point, he turned and looked in the crowd, and Dee Dee and I waved, but he must not have seen us because he didn't wave back. Dee Dee finished off the last of the popcorn. I finished off the last of my Sprite. The score stayed the same through most of the fourth quarter, with neither team making any progress. With 2 minutes left, we were forced to punt, still down by 3. That's it, Dee Dee whined. Game over. Seriously, why do we even come to these things? I can't watch Bench sit on his butt at school if I would really want to see it. Except for not anymore, I thought. Not at lunch, anyway. I didn't say it, though. I just cheered half-heartedly for the losing team. The Falcons kicked the ball. The Wildcats player fielded it at the 40, returned it to 10 yards, then 20. It looked like he actually was going to pull free and break us out of our misery. And the rest of the Wildcats were on their feet. And then the kid dropped the ball. Or maybe it was wrestled away from him. Either way, it squirted free, ping-ponged off a dozen hands and feet before getting buried in an avalanche of jerseys. The whistle blew. Referees rushed over to the pile. Dee Dee muttered to himself, "We didn't get it. There's no way we got it. We never get it." The mountain of players slowly peeled away, and a kid in a white and blue uniform popped up, holding the football like he found gold. The crowd exploded. Our Branton Middle School Falcons had a possession with 1 minute left and 60 yards to go. I looked at the home team sidelines. Bench was standing with his teammates, cheering the starting offense as it ran back on the field. The first play of run went nowhere, and then our quarterback, a kid named Trevon Miller, who everybody called Trey, took the snap and made a quick completion in the middle of the field, hitting one of his receivers for 10 just as the kid got blindsided, steamrolled by two Wildcats that slammed him right to the ground. There was a hush. The kid who caught it didn't snap right back up. The Falcons called their last time out with 20 seconds on the field. The assistant coach helped the kid limp off the field. The shook-up receiver waved to everybody to show he was okay. "You don't think," Dee Dee said, fishing his pocket, but he didn't even have time to roll the dice. We saw Coach Mallory point, and we saw number 80 jab his thumbs in his chest. Dee Dee and I started to holler, and Wolf put away his phone. Finally, Bench was off the bench. I scooted to the edge of the bleacher as number 80 lined up in the slot on the right. Just about everyone below us was standing. The crowd screaming, flailing to fill the cavernous stadium. I spotted Bench's parents leaning over the bottom rail, his father clapping his hands above his head. Trey called for the snap, dropped back, sidestepped a defender, scrambling, buying time. The seconds ticked, down to 18, rolling right, another missed tackle, down to 15 seconds, looking all over the field, 12 seconds, desperate. His receivers were all covered, 2 jerseys for every white one, except for one who wasn't being guarded. In the middle, as open as the Pacific Ocean, the other 2 receivers were blanketed along the sideline, but there was Bench at the 20, putting his hand up, calling for the ball. Nobody was covering him. He had somehow slipped through the cracks. Even from way up at the top of the stands, I could sense the quarterback's hesitation, but there really was no other option. Trey pulled the trigger, and the ball flew out of his hands, a torpedo tearing right towards Bench. A flying brown prayer launched into the sky, and I thought, there is no way, right? No way he catches it, because that's not how the universe works. Movies maybe, but not real life, not people like us, not the outliers, not the bench warmers. But I've been wrong before. By magic or magnetism or just sheer luck, it dropped right into Bench's waiting hands and nestled there, perfect. There was a half a second, maybe less, when I swear Bench looked down at the ball in disbelief. And then he started to run. The defense, suddenly solving the equation, tried to converge. Some were taken out by blockers. Others were too far away to get there in time. But one closed in and had the angle. He went for the knees, determined to bring Bench down and end the game, but number 80 leaped. legs brushing against outstretched hands, hurtling over the would-be tackler. He left the kid grasping and spinning in the dirt behind him, rumbled down to the 10, then to the 5, and the night air split with the whistle's shrill cry. The ref thrust his arms in the air, and 4 more pathetic fireworks briefly lit up the field. Fans started dancing and jumping in the aisles. Dee turned and gave me a high five. Unfreaking believable, he said, which of course kept me from having to say it, because it really was. In the midst of it all stood Bench, alone in the end zone, unable, it seems, to let go of the ball, even to spike it in his moment, until his teammates mobbed him, crushed him, swallowed him whole. I looked to the scoreboard for confirmation because sometimes you just need to see it in writing to believe it. Branton Middle School Falcons 20, North Westchester Wildcats 17. We had won. Wolf stood behind us, shaking his head. That's it then, he said. And even though he was smiling, his voice wasn't. If anything, he sounded disappointed, almost like he saw it coming. We pushed through the crowd on our way to the field, hoping to get a chance to see Bench, to tell him congratulations. But Bench was lost in a sea of white jerseys. They actually lifted him up and carried him, 24 hands propelling him halfway across the field, away from where we were standing. We could have gone down to the locker room, I guess, and waited for a glimpse of our night's hero, but Wolf said we're never going to get his attention now, and Wolf led us back to the front gate instead. He was right, of course, but I still wish we had the chance to say something. In 2 years, Bench had never had a moment like this. Never, not one. This was his poem. This was his $50 gift card moment. Some catch, huh? Dee said. Do you think he was going to drop it? Because I thought he was going to drop it for a minute. I shook my head. No, I knew he'd catch it. I lied. All around us, we heard people, mostly adults, murmuring about what a terrific play it was. We heard someone ask, who was that kid? And I almost told them, but I fumbled with what to say. Should I say it was JJ? Should I say it was Bench? I mean, my best friend? I don't know. So I ended up saying nothing at all. We walked through the gate, and I stood out in the parking lot. The cold had gone from nipping to gnashing. I shoved my hands under my armpits to keep them warm. You know, Wolf said, you never see them carry writers like that away. I gave him a strange look. What? Writers? Yeah, you know, like the famous ones. They do a reading or something, and when they're done, everybody claps politely, and that's it. They don't come over and lift up the writer and send him off at like a parade through the bookstore on their shoulders. Or surgeons, actually. You never hear about a team of nurses carrying a surgeon out of the operating room for a good job. Why not? He just saved a man's life. He should be carried around. I mean, not to take anything away from Bench, but, I mean, all he did was carry a ball. I had no idea what he was getting at. Sure, but could you have caught that ball, I asked. No. But I bet Bench couldn't get through 4 measures of Chopin's Mazurka in A minor either, Wolf said. Wolf took out his phone and started texting his parents for a ride. Dee called his mom. Mine was already waiting for me in the parking lot. I could see the white Civic flashing its lights at me like some kind of Morse code. She waved to the 3 of us as we walked closer. Are we still on for tomorrow night at Wolf's house? Dee asked as I opened the door. You guys promised. I got a whole new campaign lined up for D&D. There's zombies and everything. I assured Dee that yes, Sarek the elf would not let down his fellow adventurers. And then I waved goodbye to Wolf, who gave me a nod. He was still looking at his phone with a huge grin on his face. Maybe it was too much popcorn and soda, or just the excitement from the last play, but my stomach was rolling. How was the game? Mom asked as I buckled in. I thought about it for a moment. We won, I said, as if the fireworks didn't give it away. Well, that's good, right? Apparently the tone of my voice was a little bit off. Good? Oh, yeah, it was a great game. Probably the best game I've ever been to. She looked at me, pressing me for more, but I just looked out the window. I didn't tell her how Bench, the first friend I made in middle school, the kid she baked brownies for and had taken with us to amusement parks, had made the game-winning catch. I don't know why I didn't tell her. Maybe I felt like it was one of those had-to-be-there things, or maybe because it wasn't my moment and I didn't feel like I could do it justice. I wasn't good enough poet to put that catch into words. Or maybe, like Wolf, I felt that this was the start of something, and I was nervous about what happens next, because things like this, they don't happen to guys like us. That night, I dreamed I won the Nobel Prize for Literature. I have no idea what the Nobel Prize looks like, but in my dream, it resembled a Stanley Cup, a glinting metal behemoth nearly twice my size with handles on both sides. It had my name, my real name, Eric Voss, engraved on the base. I was the first middle school kid to ever win. Absolutely unheard of, though it didn't stop the two women in silver bikinis from kissing me on the cheek as they handed me that trophy. And there I stood, standing and sweating under the auditorium lights. I gave a speech. I thanked my dad for introducing me to Robert Frost, and my mom for pretty much everything else in my life. I thanked my friends for believing in me, and then I stood and waited for them to come up and carry me off, to lift me on their shoulders and parade me through the audience out into the lobby. I scanned the crowd, but I didn't see the faces of anyone I knew. Instead, all I could see were post-it notes, thousands of blank squares of paper where heads should be, filling the auditorium in a sea of yellow. And that's when I spotted her, Rose, standing in the balcony, dressed like her usual in flannel and jeans. Hers was the only real face I could see in the crowd. Her eyes seemed brighter than the stage light, and her mouth was twisted into a punchline smile. She looked completely normal, except for the pair of antlers that came out from either side of her head. No one else seemed to notice the antler girl standing in the balcony, the blank yellow faces staring straight ahead. I stood there paralyzed as she climbed onto the ledge, standing in her giant bare feet. She spread her arms wide. "Catch me," she said, and then she jumped. And we'll stop there. Until next time.